Hey real estate nerds, this is Alex Yoder with Pro Tip Tuesday, my favorite day of the week. And today I want to talk about a recommended lease provision that you should consider putting into your contracts that's related to air quality and mold. So this is not very common, but sometimes you will have a situation where you have a resident who is really paranoid about air quality issues because maybe they lived in a home previously that had legitimate air quality issues, or maybe the resident is a little bit of a hypochondriac and they are convinced that there is an air quality issue, even though there are no visible signs of anything. Now, what I'll add to that is whenever we have a report like this, we will always, well, almost always, depending on the situation, but almost always send out a expert restoration company just to evaluate and to do a visual check and to use their moisture meter and this kind of thing. To see if there's anything that we just can't see easily because we don't have a trained eye. But oftentimes they will go out as experts and come back and say, hey, there is no issue here. We don't know what the tenant is talking about, but they are convinced that there is an issue here. And it creates a real problem because the only real way to confirm that there are elevated levels of mold in a property is to do a formal air quality test. And those air quality tests are very, very expensive. And so housing providers reasonably are not excited to just throw money in the trash if there is no issue. And so this is kind of where this rub and this contention comes about. And if you're not familiar with mold is everywhere. So it's not whether there is mold or there isn't mold, that's the question. The question is, are there elevated levels that sort of go beyond the barrier that would then require professional remediation to address or resolve. And so with the help of our legal counsel, we have added this specific provision to our lease. And I thought it would be helpful to share this so that you can talk with your counsel and maybe work something similar into your lease so that you're well positioned should something like this come up. So I'm going to read this provision to you. Here we go. If tenant reports air quality concerns related to the potential existence of mold and there are no visible signs of substantial mold, owner agent may opt at its sole discretion to order a professional air quality test. If the professional air quality test is ordered and comes back as not having elevated levels of mold that would require the need for professional remediation, tenant shall be responsible for the cost of the air quality test performed. So again, if there is truly no issue, but you're just convinced there is for some reason, it's not reasonable to make a homeowner pay or property owner pay $600 to $1,000 plus on nothing at all, just to make you feel better. Now, obviously, if there is an issue, that should be addressed, and it should be addressed professionally. But if there is no issue and it doesn't come back as needing to be remediated because there is no concern in the air quality, then that should be a cost that the tenant should be willing to take on if they're legitimately concerned. It's not fair for a tenant who is maybe a hypochondriac, as an example, to force a housing provider to spend close to $1,000 or, a little bit less or a little bit more than $1,000, depending on the situation and the size of the property, to do a test when there is no problem. So that's kind of what we're trying to dodge here, to share the ownership if we're going to be rolling the dice on something when there is no evidence of anything. And hopefully you can work with your legal counsel to maybe position something similar in your contract to sort of address that issue before it comes up. Because usually the biggest reason there is contention is that you kind of leave things up to opinion and you leave things up to how people may feel in the moment, which is sort of a recipe for disaster. Just saying if this comes up, this is what we do, is much cleaner and typically is better for all parties involved. Hopefully this was helpful. We'll see you next week.